The first crack in my world wasn't a sudden, cataclysmic event, but the sound of my granddaughter Sadie's voice coming from my phone, echoing through my quiet living room. It was a digital ghost of a moment I wished I could forget. "Grandma Eleanor just needs to let go," she was saying, her young voice casual and dismissive. "Everything's so old here. It's like a museum of a life that's already over." The phone was playing a video, a short clip my son Andrew and his wife Clara had filmed without my knowledge. They'd titled it "A Family's Hard Choice," but the comments below told a different story. "Disgraceful," one read. "Why would they do that to her?" another asked. I sat in my favorite armchair, a silent witness to my own humiliation, a humiliation they thought was funny. They were trying to get me to move, to sell my home, to give up the last shred of my independence. They claimed it was for my own good, to ensure I was safe, but I knew the real reason was money. I felt a strange contradiction brewing within me, a deep, aching love for my son, and a hot, searing anger at the stranger he had become. I looked at the screen, at the grainy footage of myself standing by the mahogany sideboard John had given me for our 20th anniversary. My hands, shaky with emotion, were a blur on the screen. Andrew and Clara were in the background, their smiles wide and confident, as if they were doing a public service. They've caught me mid-sentence, rambling about a story from our wedding day, a story I had told 1,000 times. They had edited it to make me look frail and confused, a caricature of a senile old woman. This wasn't just a video. It was a character assassination. It was a calculated public mockery, and they had released it to garner social proof for their decision to move me to a nursing home. They were using my very dignity against me, weaponizing my memories, turning a lifetime of love into a spectacle for the internet. The comment section was a battlefield of opinions, but the most painful ones were the ones defending my family. "They're just looking out for their mom," one person wrote. "It's hard to deal with aging parents." That was the narrative they had crafted, and they were so convincing. They had presented me as a problem to be solved, a box to be ticked, a name on a legal document that would sign away my autonomy. They saw me as weak, as an old woman who would crumble under the weight of their decisions. What they didn't know was that my memory was far from gone. I remembered every detail of that day, the smell of the lemon polish Clara had insisted on using, the way Andrew's phone screen had glinted in the sunlight, the tight, unfamiliar smile on Sadie's face. I remembered it all, every single detail, every moment of my life, every happy memory, every painful secret. My stomach clenched. I had always been the quiet one, the one who kept the peace. My role in this family, the one I had so willingly adopted, was to be a source of stability, a safe harbor. I had spent my entire life serving them, raising them, sacrificing my own dreams for theirs. But in that moment, as I watched myself being humiliated on a screen, I realized that my role had become obsolete. They no longer needed me. I was just a problem to be solved, a resource to be exploited. I felt a strange contradiction brewing within me, a deep, aching love for my son, and a hot, searing anger at the stranger he had become. I thought of the day John died. He had called me over to his armchair and, with a shaky hand, had pressed a small, thick envelope into my hands. "Don't open this yet, Ellie," he had whispered, his eyes filled with a lifetime of love and regret. "Not until you have to. It's for when you feel like you have nothing left to stand on." I'd clutched it to my chest and tucked it under my sweater, a place only I knew about, a place of silent comfort, and it had stayed there, undisturbed, for 5 long years. It was a small, private confession of my own, a hidden truth that only I was privy to. It was a tiny flame of defiance against the storm of my own grief and loneliness. I reached for the envelope now, its heavy manila paper, a familiar weight against my skin. It was still there, a tangible piece of a past I was so desperately trying to hold on to. I felt a strange mix of shame and pride. Shame for having to resort to this, and pride for knowing I had something they couldn't possibly anticipate. I was about to find out just how wrong they were. They had tried to make me look like I was losing my mind, grasping at straws. They had no idea I was about to pull the first thread in a tapestry they never knew existed. They couldn't imagine the truth. My world was about to turn upside down, and it was my own family who had started it. But what they didn't know was that I had a hand on the lever too, and I was about to pull it. I hope you'll subscribe to hear what happened next, because this confession is far from over.
The viral video continued to play on a loop. The cold, pixelated faces of my family, a constant assault on my senses. I couldn't bring myself to turn it off. It was a bizarre kind of self-torture, a forced confrontation with the new reality they had created for me. My internal dialogue, usually a quiet hum of memories and to-do lists, had become a cacophony of conflicting voices. The parent in me lectured me about raising a son who would do such a thing. The child wept, asking what I had done to deserve such cruelty. The adult knew I had to act, not just for myself, but to show them the full weight of their actions. This wasn't just about a house. This was about a lifetime of love being thrown away for a few $1,000. I finally turned the phone over, the screen going dark. The silence in the room was a welcome relief, but the image of my son and daughter-in-law laughing at my expense was burned into my mind. I thought of Andrew as a little boy, his face smudged with chocolate, laughing. I thought of John, strong and handsome, with an arm around my waist, his smile so full of promise. I thought of Clara on her wedding day, radiant in white, her future stretching out before her like a golden path. I had loved them all, unconditionally, and they had repaid that love with a viral video that was being shared by strangers all over the country. A wave of clarity washed over me, a sudden, powerful realization. I had been an accomplice in my own diminishment. I had allowed them to define me, to box me in as the frail old lady who needed to be taken care of. I had accepted their condescension, their pity, their veiled insults. I had believed their narrative even when my own gut told me it was a lie. This public humiliation, as painful as it was, had shattered the mirror in which I had been viewing myself for so long. It was an awakening. I wasn't a fragile, helpless woman. I was Eleanor, the woman who had buried her husband, raised 2 children, and managed her home and finances with an iron will. I had simply forgotten that strength was a part of me, too. It was a narrative therapy moment for myself, rewriting the story I had been living. I stood up, my knees protesting with a familiar ache, but a new resolve stiffened my spine. The envelope felt heavier now, no longer just a comfort, but a key. I picked it up and held it in my hands. It was the only tangible thing I had left of John's presence, a silent testament to a life of love and secrets. He had told me to open it when I had nothing left to stand on. Now, as I stared at the viral video on my phone, I knew that moment had come. They had left me with nothing but my own resolve. I thought about the family's Thanksgiving dinner, the one they had filmed for the video, the one where they had presented me with a retirement plan for my home. I remembered the conversation, the subtle jabs, the veiled threats. They had talked about my memory lapses, about my forgetfulness, but they hadn't mentioned the most important part, the part about Andrew's failing business, the part about their deep, crushing debt. They had acted like their financial struggles were a distant problem, one that could be solved by selling my house. But I had seen the desperation in Andrew's eyes, a fear that was a mirror image of my own a few moments ago. I had a choice to make. I could use this envelope to get revenge, to show them what a fool they had been. I could use it to expose their lies, to dismantle their public image piece by piece. Or I could use it to help them. I could use it to save them from the consequences of their own choices. I was not sure which path I would choose. The idea of vengeance was sweet, a bitter taste on my tongue. But the idea of forgiveness was just as tempting, a balm for a wound that felt like it would never heal. The truth was, I had a secret of my own, something I had kept from my family for years, a truth about myself that I didn't want to admit. I had forgotten. I had actually forgotten something important, and that's what made their mockery so painful. But I was about to find out if that single lapse in memory was a weakness or the very thing that would give me the strength to win.
The morning after the video went viral, a suffocating silence fell over my home. My phone, which had been buzzing with notifications, was now eerily still. Andrew didn't call to check in, and Clara didn't send her usual condescending text messages about meal prepping or the benefits of assisted living. They were waiting. I could feel their presence in the quiet, a thick, palpable tension that was far worse than the words they had spoken. They were waiting for me to crack, to call them in a fit of panic and hand over the envelope that now sat on my coffee table, a silent testament to my newfound power. But I didn't. Instead, I spent the morning in my garden, my hands in the soil, feeling the comforting weight of the earth, the feel of the dirt, the smell of fresh soil. It was all so real, so grounded, so unlike the digital world they had tried to trap me in. The doorbell rang, a jarring sound in the midday stillness. I opened the door to find Andrew standing there alone, his face pale and drawn. He looked different, not like the arrogant stranger from the video, but like a scared little boy. The bravado from the day before was gone, replaced by a deep, weary shame. "Mom, can we talk?" he asked, his voice low and urgent. I nodded and led him into the living room, a strange sense of victory stirring within me. He had come to me. He had broken the silence. He sat on the edge of the sofa, his hands clasped nervously in his lap. He didn't look at me. He just stared at the old family pictures on the mantelpiece, his eyes filled with a pain I had never seen before. It was the same pain I had seen in his father's eyes on the day John had handed me the envelope. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "For yesterday. We were wrong. You were right. This is about money. It's about us needing help." I waited. This was not the confession I had expected. I had anticipated a shallow apology, a veiled attempt to get the envelope. I hadn't expected this vulnerability. This was the adult talking to me, not the parent trying to scold me. "Claire and we're in trouble, Mom," he said, finally looking at me. His eyes were not filled with greed, but with fear. "The business, the one I started 3 years ago, it's failing. We've lost everything. The house, the cars, everything. We're on the verge of bankruptcy. I've been borrowing from our accounts for months just to stay afloat. And now, there's nothing left. Not a dime." The words hung in the air between us, a heavy, unburdened truth. I had suspected they were having financial troubles, but I hadn't known the extent of it. I had thought they were just greedy, that they wanted my home to supplement their lavish lifestyle. But now, as I looked at my son, I saw the truth.
He wasn't a villain. He was just a man who had made a bad decision, a domino effect. He was the one who was truly bankrupt. A new feeling washed over me, a powerful and disorienting mix of anger and sympathy. I was angry that he had lied to me, that he had tried to humiliate me, but I also felt a deep maternal instinct to help him. I had to remind myself of the parent-adult-child dialogue. I could not fall back into the parent role, lecturing him. I had to remain the adult and hear him out. Why didn't you just tell me, Andrew? Why did you have to go about it this way? He looked away, the shame returning. I couldn't. I was too proud. I didn't want you to see me as a failure. We thought if we sold the house, we could get back on our feet. We would have given you a nice place, Mom. We would have taken care of you. It was a lie, and we both knew it. They would have taken the money and never looked back. But I didn't call him out on it. Not yet. I wanted to see how far he would go. And Clara? Does she know you're here? He shook his head. She's at the bank, trying to get another loan. She thinks this is our only option. She's so scared, Mom. We both are. We don't know what to do. I looked at the envelope on the table. It seemed to pulse with a life of its own. It was not just a document. It was a key. It was a choice. I could use it to help them, to save them from themselves, or I could use it to protect myself, to get the revenge I had been so close to wishing for. Mom, he said, his voice cracking. There's more. The reason we're in so deep is not just the business. It's a friend of mine. You remember Michael from college? His daughter has been sick for a year, a rare kind of blood disorder. He lost his insurance, and he was falling behind on the bills. I was trying to help him. I thought I could manage it. I thought the business would take off, but it didn't. The words hit me like a revelation. The greed I had so easily attributed to my son was in fact an act of silent generosity. This wasn't a story about a selfish man trying to steal from his mother. This was a story about a compassionate son who had made a terrible mistake, one that had an elegant symmetry to a memory I hadn't allowed myself to confront in decades. The hero-antagonist twist. You were helping someone else? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. I felt a surge of emotions, pride, disappointment, and a profound sadness. My son wasn't a monster. He was just a man, flawed and complicated, acting out of love he hadn't known how to express without secrecy. I looked at the boy I had raised, now a broken man, and felt the hot sting of tears in my eyes. The moral dilemma had just deepened. Now I didn't just have to choose between revenge and forgiveness. I had to choose between my own security and my son's redemption. My head began to spin with 1,000 questions. Who was this person he was helping? And what did it have to do with the video, the humiliation, and why did it feel like I had heard this story before? All I knew was that his words had changed everything I thought I knew about him and about myself.
Andrew's confession hung in the air, a fragile bridge between the person I thought he was and the man he was revealing himself to be. I sat in silence for a long time, the weight of his secret pressing down on me. I thought of Michael, a shy boy with a quick smile who had been Andrew's roommate in college.
I remembered him helping me carry groceries in from the car. His polite "thank you, Mrs. Eleanor," a distant but clear memory. The idea of his child being sick, of Andrew quietly trying to help, was so at odds with the greedy son who had humiliated me. It was a perfect red herring situation. All the clues had pointed to greed, but the truth was far more complex. My mind, so sharp and clear in that moment, raced with 1,000 possibilities. Was he telling the truth? Was this a new lie? A more elaborate attempt to get his hands on the envelope? I needed to be sure. My son's desperation was palpable, but so was my own need for the truth. "Andrew," I said, my voice steady, "tell me everything, from the beginning, every single detail." He began to talk, his words tumbling out in a rush of relief and regret. He told me about the medical bills, about the failing business, about the humiliation of having to ask his father-in-law for money. He told me about Clara's rising panic and her idea for the video. "She said it was the only way to get you to see reason, Mom," he said, his eyes filled with a new kind of shame. "She said you'd just see the video and realize you couldn't stay here alone anymore. We didn't think about how it would look to others." I had never seen him so vulnerable. It was a side of my son I hadn't seen since he was a teenager, since he was a boy who still came to me with his problems. As he spoke, I felt a strange shift inside me. The anger began to recede, replaced by a deep, unwavering empathy. I saw the shadow of his father in him, a quiet and stubborn man who would have done anything to protect the people he loved, even if it meant making a terrible mistake. This was not a story of a son's betrayal. This was a story of a son's misguided love. And I knew with a certainty that settled deep in my bones that I had a choice. I could use this moment to punish him, or I could use it to help him become the man I knew he was capable of being. But first, I needed to know if he was telling the whole truth. I reached for the envelope on the table. "You want to know what this is?" I asked, holding it up. Andrew's eyes widened, a flicker of hope returning to them. "This is what John left me. This is what you and Clara want, but you can't have it. Not yet. Not until I know you're telling me the truth." I stood up and went to my desk, my mind already working on a plan. I pulled out an old phone book, the kind with thin, brittle pages, and flipped to the A section. I remembered a name from long ago, a man who had helped John with a legal matter, a man I had never met but whose business card John had kept in his wallet for years. I had no idea if he was still alive or if his number was still valid, but it was my only lead. I had to find out the full story. I had to see the documentation, the medical records, the financial statements. I couldn't just take my son's word for it. As I dialed the number, my heart pounded with a mix of fear and excitement. I was stepping outside the boundaries of my comfortable, predictable life. I was becoming an investigator, a detective in my own family's drama. I was no longer the passive victim in the viral video. I was the person pulling the strings, orchestrating the next act. The phone rang, a hollow, echoing sound in the quiet room. A voice, old and gruff, answered on the third ring. "Hello? My name is Eleanor May. I was married to John May. I believe he may have known you many years ago." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I thought he was going to hang up. I was about to apologize for calling when he spoke again. "Eleanor May? You're John's wife? I've been trying to find you for years. I have something of his, something he told me to give to you, only you, when you were ready. Something he called his insurance policy." My breath caught in my throat. I had a second chance. I had a document that was not just about money. It was a testament to my husband's foresight and a mirror of his own past mistakes. This was a whole new story. All I knew was that I was about to hear a truth that would change everything, and it was a truth John had intended for me to hear. The lawyer's office was a shrine to a life I never knew. Dark mahogany shelves, a scent of old leather and dust, and framed certificates that spelled out a long and impressive career. Mr. Abernathy, a man whose face was a road map of wrinkles, sat across from me. He was nothing like the sleek, modern lawyers I'd seen on television. He was a man from another time, a man of quiet authority. He had been John's confidant, his insurance policy, and now my only link to a truth I was desperate to uncover. The air was thick with the weight of unspoken history. He had just finished explaining the basics, the business, the investment, the successful company John had secretly been a part of, but he had not yet explained the most important part, the why. "Eleanor," he said, his voice raspy with age, "I've been waiting for you to call for 5 years." John left very specific instructions. He said that if you ever called, it meant you were in trouble. It meant you had been pushed to a place where you felt you had nothing left. He called it his insurance policy. He placed a heavy leather-bound ledger on the table. Its pages were yellowed and brittle, filled with John's immaculate handwriting. "This," he said, tapping the book, "is a record of everything. The investments, the properties, the silent partnerships. He created a small empire, Eleanor, an empire separate from your life, a life he cherished and protected." I reached out and touched the ledger. It was cold against my fingertips, a stark contrast to the warmth of John's hand. This was the discovered documentation twist I had needed. The ledger wasn't just a book of accounts. It was a map of a hidden life, a secret world that John had built without me. I felt a confusing mix of emotions, betrayal that he had kept this from me, but also a deep, bone-weary gratitude. He had done this for me. He had done this to protect me. But why? "This is all so much," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. I thought of all the years we had lived in this house, the modest life we had led, the careful budgets, the clipped coupons, the small luxuries we had celebrated. All the while, John had been building a fortune, a shadow life that I knew nothing about. It was the identity swap I never saw coming. I had thought I knew my husband, but I had only known a part of him. My memory wasn't failing. It was simply incomplete. The adult in me was taking it all in, processing the information logically. The child felt a pang of deep sadness, of loneliness. All those years, and I was in the dark. Mr. Abernathy leaned forward, his eyes soft with a kind of understanding. "John was a good man, Eleanor. He was fiercely protective. But he had his reasons for keeping this a secret, reasons he believed were vital to your security and happiness." "What reasons?" I asked, my voice trembling with the need for the full truth. "Was it because of our family? Was it because of Andrew and Clara?" He took a long, slow breath. He adjusted his glasses, and I knew the answer was going to be difficult. "It was because of a past he never told you about, a betrayal that shaped his life." He opened a drawer and pulled out a single photograph, yellowed and faded with age. It was a picture of younger John, maybe in his early 20s, standing with his older brother, a man with a stern, unfamiliar face. The man's arm was around John's shoulder, a gesture of affection that looked strangely forced. "This is his brother, William." The picture was taken a week before he stole everything from John. My mind raced back to a long-forgotten memory, a single fleeting sentence John had said years ago when we were first married.
My family is a mess, Ellie. We're better off staying away from them. I had always assumed it was a simple family feud, nothing more. But now, as I looked at the photo, I saw the truth. It wasn't a feud, it was a betrayal. John had been hurt, deeply and irrevocably. This wasn't just about my son's greed. It was about my husband's trauma, a family curse of betrayal that had been passed down generation to generation. The shame I had felt for my son was now tinged with a painful empathy for my late husband. Mr. Abernathy's voice broke through my thoughts. John started this company with William. They built it from the ground up. But when it became successful, William claimed it was all his. He used some legal trickery, some loopholes, and he stole it all. John lost everything: the trust, the business, the inheritance his father had left him. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. The parallel between John's story and Andrew's was terrifyingly clear. Andrew wasn't a villain. He was a mirror image of the man John had once been. He was a son trying to build a business, driven by the best of intentions, but on the verge of losing it all. And in his desperation, he had turned on me, just as John's brother had turned on him. John spent years rebuilding. He swore he would never let that happen again. He swore that he would protect his legacy, his family, from that same kind of greed. He swore that he would build the life that no one could take away from you. This, he said, tapping the ledger, is a testament to that promise, and a testament to a truth he never wanted you to face. I was a ghost of a person I thought I was, living in a house full of secrets, married to a man I didn't truly know. The anger and the shame had returned, not at my family, but at the past I had so blindly accepted. I was about to discover the full scope of John's second chance, a second chance that was now mine to use. And I was about to be faced with a choice that would define not only my future, but the future of my family as a whole.
Mr. Abernathy's words had shattered the tidy world I had built around my husband's memory. John wasn't just a loving husband and a doting father. He was a man haunted by a past betrayal, a man who had built a secret fortune, not out of a love for money, but out of a desperate need to protect his family from the kind of pain he had endured. He had become his own shadow, a man who was both a victim and a perpetrator of a kind of emotional distance. And in his paranoia, he had created a situation that would allow history to repeat itself. I suddenly saw myself, a younger version of me, complicit in this secrecy, never asking too many questions, never pushing him to reveal the full truth of his past. I had let him carry that burden alone, and now I was paying the price. This was my moral dilemma. I too had made a mistake of silence. "He told me to give you a letter," Mr. Abernathy said, his voice softer now. "He said you would know when it was the right time to read it. It was his confession, Eleanor." He opened a second drawer and pulled out a simple white envelope. It was not sealed with the family crest. This one was personal. This one was just for me. I took the letter, and my hands trembled. This was it, the final piece of the puzzle. I had spent a lifetime believing I was a good person, a good wife, a good mother, but now I was seeing a darker version of myself, a woman who, in her own quiet way, allowed the seeds of distrust to be sown. The mirror effect of his secret was showing me my own flaws. I opened the letter and began to read. John's handwriting was familiar, but the words were a stranger's. He spoke of his love for me, of course, but he also spoke of his shame at being betrayed by his own brother,
his shame at the lies he had told me to hide the truth. He had made me a part of his secret world, but he had also kept me at an arm's length, protecting himself from the possibility of being hurt again. He had left me an empire, but he had also left me a legacy of distrust. Ellie, the letter began, if you are reading this, it means you have nothing left. I'm so sorry. I know this seems like a gift, a solution to all your problems, but it is not. It is a burden. It is the burden of a man who was so afraid of being betrayed that he built a world in which no one could ever get close to me again. I am so sorry for the secrets I kept. I should have trusted you with everything. I should have told you about William. I should have told you about the betrayal. I should have told you about the legal battles and the stolen money. I didn't want you to see me as a victim. I wanted you to see me as a strong man, a man who could protect you. But I was not a strong man. I was a scared boy, and I was so afraid of being hurt again that I built this fortress around my heart. The words blurred before my eyes. He had been so proud of his work, so proud of the life he had given me, but it was a life built on a foundation of lies. He had spent his entire life running from his past, only to leave it as a burden for me. He had fulfilled a wish, a desire for security, but not in the way I had ever expected. The wish fulfilled had a bitter, painful taste. I looked up at Mr. Abernathy, tears streaming down my face. He made the same mistake, I said, my voice choked with emotion. He did the same thing to me that William did to him. He didn't tell me the truth. He was trying to protect you, Eleanor, in his own way, Mr. Abernathy said gently. Protection is not a cage. A secret is not a gift. I looked at the photograph of John and his brother. I saw the shame on John's face, the same shame I had seen on Andrew's face just yesterday, a generational wound. I suddenly realized that my family's problems were not just about greed. They were about fear. Andrew was afraid of being a failure, just as John had been, and my family was afraid of being vulnerable, just as John had been. I had to break this cycle. I had to do something that neither John nor William had ever done. I had to forgive. But forgiveness wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't erase the pain. It would simply be a step forward, a decision to not let the past define my future. The pain of the video, the pain of the lies, the pain of my husband's secrecy, it was all still there, but now it was a part of my story, not the whole of it. I had to choose. I could either let this secret inheritance be a monument to John's fear, or I could use it to build a new kind of legacy for my family, a legacy of honesty, compassion, and courage. I had come here with one question: how to fight back. I was leaving with a much more difficult one: how to forgive, and how to use this power not to punish, but to heal. I had to face a decision that would not only change my life, but the very fabric of my family. I had to find a way to use this newfound power not for personal gain, but for a greater good. But what was that greater good? And would my family ever be able to understand?
I left Mr. Abernathy's office with a weight I had never known. It was more than the leather ledger and the sealed letter from John. It was the burden of a secret that had defined my life and my husband's for decades. The world outside the office building looked different. The trees seemed greener, the sky bluer, and the sounds of the city, once a comforting hum, were now a jarring reminder of a world that had moved on while I was trapped in a past I'd never truly understood. I felt like a tourist in my own life, a stranger in a familiar land. The silence of the car ride home was a canvas for my racing thoughts. John's betrayal was not malicious, not in the way Andrew and Clara's had been, but it was a betrayal nonetheless. He had protected me, yes, but he had also diminished me. He had made a choice for me, a decision to keep me in the dark, and in doing so, he had taken away my right to face the world with him as an equal partner. I was left with a painful truth. He had treated me like a child, and I, in my own quiet way, had allowed it. The forgiveness that doesn't remove the pain theme felt so real, a constant ache in my chest. The pain of the humiliation was now compounded by the pain of this new revelation. When I stepped back into my home, it felt different. The grandfather clock in the corner, once a symbol of continuity, now seemed like a silent accomplice, ticking away the years of John's deception. The armchair, a source of comfort, now seemed like a stage for the final act of a play I never wanted to be in. The house wasn't a sanctuary, it was a museum of a life built on a fragile foundation of secrets. I walked from room to room, touching the surfaces I had polished for years, but nothing felt solid. My world, the one I had believed was so simple and honest, was a mirage. I found the viral video still on my phone. I watched it again, but this time my perspective had shifted. I saw not a frail old woman being humiliated, but a woman at a crossroads. I saw the fear in Andrew's eyes, the desperation in Clara's manufactured smile. They were just like John, running from something. Andrew from the shame of his business failing, Clara from the fear of losing their status. They were just broken people, acting out of fear, just as John had for so many years. The hero-antagonist twist was no longer about good versus evil. It was about wounded people wounding each other. The generational curse of greed and betrayal was a real, tangible thing. It was a poison that had been passed down from John's father to his brother and then to John and now to my son. I saw the mirror effect, a reflection of my own silent complicity. I had seen the signs, the subtle stress lines around John's eyes, the sudden coldness when his family was mentioned, but I had never asked. I had been afraid of the answer, and in my fear, I had let the poison fester. I sat down at my desk, the heavy ledger and John's letter in front of me. I had a choice. I could use the wealth he had amassed to punish them, to show them the full extent of their mistake. I could use it to destroy them, to take away their house, to leave them in the same state of destitution they had tried to leave me in. The idea was tempting. It was a beautiful, bitter revenge. It would be a final act of justice. But was it what I wanted? I thought of the look on Andrew's face when he confessed his shame. I thought of my granddaughter, Sadie, so young and innocent, caught in the middle of a war she didn't understand. I had to be better than this. I had to break the cycle. I had to show them what true strength was. Strength wasn't about hiding secrets or accumulating wealth. Strength was about honesty, about vulnerability, about doing what was right even when it hurt. I took out my laptop, the old, bulky model that John had bought me for my 60th birthday. It was the one he had used for his own secret work. I felt a surge of emotion as I typed in the password, a combination of our anniversary and his mother's birthday. I opened the browser and went to the video sharing site. I looked at the video, at the comments, at the endless stream of judgment and condescension. I could use this platform, the very tool they had used to humiliate me, to tell a different story. Not a story of revenge, but a story of redemption. Not just for me, but for all of us. I could use this second chance, not for personal gain, but to teach my family an elegant, deserved lesson and help a noble cause. I had to do it. For John, for Andrew, for Sadie, for myself. I knew exactly what I had to do. The plan was clear, a path that led to not a cliff, but to a new beginning. I picked up my phone and dialed Andrew's number, my thumb hovering over the call button.
The moment of truth was here. I had to take the first step.
The phone rang twice before Andrew answered, his voice a tight, guarded, "Hello, Mom?" He was expecting an argument, a lecture, or maybe a final, tearful capitulation. But he was about to get something else entirely. "Andrew," I said, my voice calm and steady, devoid of the emotion he was so used to hearing. "I've been thinking about what you said, about your business and about Michael's daughter." The silence on the other end was a testament to his shock. He had expected me to yell, to cry, to use his confession as a weapon against him. But I was doing none of those things. I was being the adult, and he, for the first time in a long time, was the child, listening to my every word. "I want to help," I said, the words feeling foreign on my tongue. "I want to help you help them." His breath hitched. "Mom, what are you talking about? I don't understand." "I have a proposition for you. It's not about selling the house. It's about a new beginning. I've spoken to a lawyer. I have access to a resource that can help. But there are conditions." "Conditions?" he repeated, his voice laced with suspicion. "What kind of conditions, Mom?" "The kind that require honesty, Andrew," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "No more secrets. No more lies. You need to tell Clara everything you told me. And then I want you to join me on a live stream." He laughed, a short, nervous sound. "Mom, what? A live stream? Are you okay? What about the Gables, the house? This is ridiculous." "No, Andrew, it's not ridiculous. The world has seen you and Clara make a public spectacle of your mother. Now they get to see you make a public confession. It's only fair." I heard him talking to Clara in the background. Her sharp whispers were audible even through the phone. "What did she say? Is she going to give us the money? She's losing her mind, Andrew. She has to be." "No, Clara, I am not losing my mind. In fact, I think I've just found it. And I'm not going to give you anything. I am going to teach you how to earn it. And I'm going to do it live, for everyone to see." The silence was deafening. They had expected to see me on my knees, begging for their help. They had expected to see me weak, vulnerable, broken. But instead, they were hearing a woman who was in control, a woman who had a plan. This was the beginning of my second chance, a twist on the hero's journey, where the protagonist uses her power not for personal gain, but to teach an elegant, deserved lesson. This was my retribution. I thought of the viral video. It was still out there, a monument to their cruelty. But I was about to transform it. I was about to use their own weapon against them. I would turn their humiliation of me into a platform for a much larger story, a story of redemption, forgiveness, and the power of honesty. I would use this platform to expose not their greed, but the pain that had led them there. I would show the world that my memory was not failing, but that I had simply been remembering the wrong things. I knew this would be hard. I knew they would resist, but I had no choice. I had to break the cycle. I had to show them what real strength looked like. And I had to do it not just for me, but for the legacy of my family, the one that John had so desperately tried to protect and that I was now going to redeem. They had no idea what was coming, the surprise I had in store, a final act of grace that would leave them in shock and bitter regret. I took a deep breath. "Andrew," I said, "this is a choice. You can either walk away and face your problems alone, or you can join me and start over. But there is one thing you must know. What's in that envelope isn't just money. It's a secret that your father kept his entire life. And it's a secret that explains everything." I hung up the phone before he could reply, leaving him with the weight of my words. The first domino had fallen. Now, the rest would follow. And they would lead to a final, unexpected place. Andrew and Clara arrived at my house a few hours later, their faces a tense mixture of suspicion and greed. The desperation in their eyes was a raw, unfiltered thing, stripped of the condescending smiles from the viral video. They didn't even knock. Andrew simply opened the door, as if he still owned the place. He held a legal document in his hand, a pre-written agreement to transfer my assets to him. Clara stood behind him, her arms crossed, her eyes narrowed with an icy calculation. They had a new plan, one they thought would outsmart me. They wanted to negotiate, to talk about the inheritance, to get what they came for without having to go on camera. They had completely misunderstood the new Eleanor. "Mom, look, let's just be reasonable," Andrew said, his voice strained. "We can get a lawyer to handle all this. We can just sign the papers and move on. There's no need to make a public spectacle." He was using my own word against me, trying to manipulate me back into the role of the quiet, compliant mother. But I was no longer that woman. I was the adult in this transaction, and they were the frantic children trying to get what they wanted without a thought for the consequences. I looked at them both, their faces so familiar yet so foreign. "The spectacle has already been made, Andrew," I said, my voice as calm as a summer lake. "The world has seen a video of your mother being publicly humiliated. I'm simply giving them the rest of the story. The truth. No more secrets." Clara scoffed, her disdain barely concealed. "What truth? The truth is you're a senile old woman who's been living in a dream world. Andrew's been supporting you for years, and now you're going to give some lecture on a live stream? This is ridiculous. Just give us the documents, Eleanor. We'll take care of you. We'll make sure you have a nice life." Her words, meant to be reassuring, were a physical assault. They were a reminder of the condescending pity they had shown me for years, the narrative they had so carefully constructed. "A nice life?" I asked, my voice rising slightly. "Is that what you think I want? A gilded cage? No, Clara. I want to live a life of my own making, a life built on honesty and courage, not on the secrets of the past, the kind of life John tried to build for us." "This," I said, pointing to my old laptop on the coffee table, "is where we start. It's where the video began, and it's where it ends." Their faces went pale. They hadn't expected this. They had expected me to be frail, to be weak, to be easily manipulated. They had never expected me to be in control. I opened the live stream application and positioned the camera to show the three of us sitting in the living room in front of the very same sideboard they had mocked in the video. The space felt charged with history, a stage for a final reckoning. The symmetry between beginning and end was now complete. "Now," I said, my finger hovering over the Go Live button, "I want you both to sit down. You can either be a part of this and start over, or you can walk away and face your problems alone. The choice is yours. But I promise you, what I'm about to reveal will change everything, not just for me, but for all of us." I had given them a choice, a final act of grace, a chance to redeem themselves, but they were still so blinded by their greed and shame that they couldn't see it. Clara moved to stand by the door, her body language a defiant no. But Andrew hesitated. He looked at me, at the unflinching gaze in my eyes, and he saw the woman who had raised him, the woman who had always been there for him. He saw the hero who had been hidden beneath the antagonist's narrative. He had told me his secret, and he was now faced with a moral choice. Would he choose his pride, or would he choose the truth? He took a step towards the sofa, his shoulders slumping in defeat. Clara watched him with a look of pure fury, a look that said, "You're a fool, Andrew." But she didn't leave. She was too curious. The thought of what was in that envelope, the thought of what I might do, was a powerful motivator. She had to stay. She had to know. The fear of missing out was palpable in the room.
I looked at the comments starting to roll in on the screen. Is this a follow-up video? Is this the family from the other video? The digital world was watching. They had made me a spectacle, and I was about to turn their cruel joke into a public sermon on kindness, forgiveness, and the power of honesty. I had a second chance to show the world and my family who I truly was. The moment of truth had arrived. The camera was on, the world was watching, and I was ready to speak.
I clicked the Go Live button, and a small red light appeared on the laptop. The camera was on, and the world was watching. Andrew and Clara sat on the sofa, stiff and silent, their faces a mixture of fear and defiance. I didn't look at them. I looked directly into the camera, into the eyes of the thousands of people who had watched me be humiliated. My voice, when I spoke, was as clear and steady as a mountain stream. "Hello," I began. "My name is Eleanor May. You may have seen a video of me recently, a video that was meant to show you the sad, slow decline of an old woman. It was a video that was meant to be a justification for my family to take my home and move me into a nursing facility. But that video was not the full story. And today, I want to tell you the truth, the entire truth." I took a deep breath and began to speak, not just about the video, but about a family that was lost. I told them about my husband, John, and his silent, decades-long battle with the fear of betrayal. I told them about his brother, William, and the business that was stolen from him. I told them about the shadow life John had built, the one he had kept a secret from me out of a misguided sense of protection. I spoke of the ledger, of the money, of the silent partnerships he had built. And as I spoke, I watched Andrew and Clara's faces, their eyes wide with a shock that was slowly turning into bitter regret. They had been so focused on my supposed frailty that they had completely missed the vast empire that had been right under their noses. Then I told them about my son, Andrew, and his secret. I looked at him, and for the first time in a long time, I saw the boy I had raised, not the man he had become. I told the world about his secret generosity, about his loyalty to his friend Michael, about his brave attempt to help a sick child. The camera was on Andrew now, capturing the shame and the raw vulnerability in his eyes. I was not shaming him, I was redeeming him. I was showing the world that he was not a monster, but a complicated, flawed man who had made a mistake out of love. "And so," I said, my voice gaining a final, powerful resonance, "I'm not here to get revenge. I'm not here to punish my family. I'm here to break a cycle of fear and betrayal that has haunted us for generations." I held up the ledger, its pages a testament to a life of secrets. My husband left me a fortune, but he also left me a lesson that money, when it is hidden and hoarded, becomes a cage. But when it is used for a noble cause, it can be a tool for good. I then made the announcement that left my family in absolute shock. I announced the creation of the John May Foundation for Compassion, a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping families with unexpected medical expenses and helping small businesses that were on the brink of collapse. I had used their public humiliation of me as a platform for a greater good. I had taken their weapon, a viral video, and turned it into a broadcast for hope and generosity. The final twist, the unexpectedly gentle, touching, or instructive resolution. I looked at Andrew.
"You will be a part of this, Andrew," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "You will not get this money as a handout. You will work for it. You will be the director of operations for the foundation. You will use your business acumen to help others. You will take the lessons you have learned and use them to build something honest and true." His face crumpled, a torrent of emotion washing over him. He was a man who had lost everything only to be given a chance to gain something far more valuable. Then I looked at Clara, who had risen from the sofa, a look of pure, unadulterated fury on her face. Her dreams of a lavish lifestyle, of a fortune, of a new house had just been turned into a job, a salary, a life that required work and effort. She was left with nothing but her bitterness and her own regrets. She had lost. She had been defeated, not by my anger, but by my kindness. I concluded the live stream, signing off with a message of hope and a reminder that true value isn't in what we possess, but in what we give. I ended the stream and looked at my family, a family that was now completely, utterly broken, but also a family that had been given a chance to heal. I had used my newfound power not for personal gain, but to teach them an elegant, deserved lesson and to help a noble cause. I had my home, I had my dignity, and I had a new mission. My family was left in shock and bitter regret, and I was left with a strange sense of peace. The final unanswered question: what will they do now? Will they choose to heal, or will they continue to be defined by their shame? I had given them the map. The journey was theirs to take.